Hello and welcome to another episode of The Classical Republican. Today we are with Maurizio Viroli, an Italian Machiavelli scholar who studied at Cambridge and taught at Princeton University. He's an emeritus professor, and he's taught at other places in the US also. So, Professor Viroli, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your very kind invitation. Let me, however, say that I am at the moment in Austin, Texas, and I'm teaching in the Department of Government, even if, as you very correctly said, I am an emeritus professor from Princeton University.
Professor Viroli, how would you define republicanism?
Well, I've written a book on republicanism called, in fact, Republicanism, and I have, oh yes, you are well armed. And I have, in fact, written a while on this subject. In my opinion, republicanism is a theory of political and social emancipation. Emancipation from what? From domination. That is, from arbitrary powers of individuals, arbitrary power of groups. That's to say, the arbitrary power in the sense, the fact that there are people who have the power of imposing their will, their interest over the common good, and therefore they are making their fellow citizens servants. Let me give you an example of what I mean by arbitrary power. Consider the case of workers who have no rights, and they are at the mercy of their employers. They are under an arbitrary power, and therefore they are, from a Republican point of view, unfree. The simple fact that you are under the arbitrary power of a person or of a few persons makes you unfree from a Republican point of view. I want to stress that the individuals, if the individuals hold arbitrary power over others, they are masters in the Republican language. And the citizens who are under their domination, is to say, they're under their arbitrary power, they are servants, which means they are not free. Let me conclude by stressing that the Republican ideal of political liberty is more radical than the liberal conception of liberty that asserts that we are free as long as nobody is interfering with our spheres of rights. For a Republican, the simple fact that we are under arbitrary powers, under domination, makes us unfree. Even if our masters are good and benevolent, the fact that they are masters makes us unfree. So Republican liberty can only exist if there are no arbitrary powers of masters, which means it requires Republican liberty, the rule of law. Cicero put it very nicely when he said, omnes legum servisumus ut liberi esse possumus, which means, translated, we must all be servants of the laws in order to be free. Because if just one person or a few persons are above the laws, they are masters, and therefore the others are servants.
Thank you. How important are checks and balances in the mixed regime?
Well, the idea of checks and balances was a product of Republican political theory. They didn't call it checks and balances. They called it mixed regime. Mixed regime is to say a form of government that combines in a fine balance the power of one. Normally, like I see you have a Venetian flag behind you. In Venice, this regal or princely element was a doge. In Florence was a lifetime gonfalonier. In modern republics, this almost monarchical element, not almost, this element, this power of one is represented by the president of the republic. But yes, the Republican idea is that you need to have a mixed regime to be sure that no one can impose his own will. This is to say, if the mixed regime is a safeguard against tyranny, of course, the unlimited power of one, but also against oligarchy, the unlimited power of the wealthy, and against the unlimited power of the demos. The demos too can be tyrannical. What we call today populism was in classical Republican language called licentiousness, or the immoderate power of the demos. Yes, indeed, you are absolutely right. Republicanism sees the mixed government, or as you say, checks and balances as safeguards for liberty, but all Republican political writers, they insist that in addition to good institutions, you need good mores. This is to say, good habits, good beliefs. Institutions without mores, they don't last long. They get corrupted for Republican thinkers.
Right, thank you. Now, I should mention that you've written several books on Machiavelli. One of my favorites was Niccolò Smile. That was a biography. And so definitely you have been influenced by Machiavelli, but other than Machiavelli, who has influenced your ideas on republicanism?
Well, let me just say that I am still loyal to Niccolò, and I am in fact writing what I think will be my last book on Machiavelli's political thought, and the title will be A Good Teacher of the Good, Machiavelli's Republican Vision. So I'm going against just 5 centuries of interpretations of Machiavelli. Let me also say why Machiavelli is so important for republicanism, because I think he has laid down a vision of what it means to live in freedom. In Italian, it's vivere libero. But also Machiavelli has taught us what it takes in practice to institute, to preserve, to reform a republic in which we can live in freedom. He has admirably combined virtue in the sense of strength, of courage, determination, strength of the soul and the mind and the body, and wisdom, the ability, the capacity of understanding our own times, specific situations, and to be able, therefore, to successfully act upon specific situations. But I have other scholars, other intellectual mentors. The second after Machiavelli is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who, by the way, deeply admired Machiavelli. On Rousseau, I've written many years ago my PhD thesis at the European University Institute in Florence. And what is Jean-Jacques Rousseau's special contribution to Republican political theory that you cannot find, or you cannot find it with the same intensity and precision in Niccolò, is the theory of inequality. There is no doubt about it, that Rousseau introduced it within the Republican language, the subject, the issue, the problem of social inequality in a way that no other writers did before him. What is wrong with inequality for Jean-Jacques? Well, what is wrong with inequality is the fact that if you are poor, if you do not have properties and wealth, then you are not respected. You do not get l'estime et l'admiration, the esteem and the admiration of your fellow citizens. Nobody looks at you. This means that inequality marks your mind and your body and your life. So the theory of inequality was Jean-Jacques' distinctive contribution. Then I have my third mentor. This time he's Giuseppe Mazzini, the Italian apostle of the Risorgimento. He was born in 1805. He died in 1872. Mazzini and his followers, for instance, the theorists of liberal socialism, such as Carlo Rosselli. What is Mazzini's distinctive contribution to republicanism? Oh, very simple. I can answer with one word: duty. The idea of his theory of duty understood as the religion of duty, is to say, the idea that if we want to attain liberty, liberty from foreign domination, liberty from exploitation, liberty from slavery, liberty from discrimination, you need men and women who are prepared to commit themselves to the long and arduous struggle for liberty, because they think it is their duty, an obligation to themselves, to their own conscience. If you don't have men and women who think that liberation is their duty, liberation does not have the strength to resist the enemies of liberty. In fact, Mazzini revealed, I think, a strong, realistic argument. Without a sense of duty, social movements of emancipation don't last enough to win. So you see, I have a large family, a large set of counselors: Niccolò, Jean-Jacques, and Giuseppe Mazzini.
Oh, very good. Oh, thank you for that answer. What are your thoughts on James Harrington, and what are his contributions to republicanism?
Well, that's a magnificent story. When, as you know, Republican political ideas were rediscovered in Renaissance Florence, in Venice, in Siena, that was the foundational period of modern republicans. But by the beginnings of the 16th century, almost no Italian republic, except for Venice, remained free. Republican political ideas, as a result, part of the collapse of Republican institutions, traveled to Northern Europe. And they traveled to the Low Countries, Holland, and they traveled to England. In the 17th century, so you have a remarkable flourishing of Republican ideas. James Harrington was one, but there are other thinkers, for instance, Algernon Sidney, for instance, scholars like Henri Neville. What did they add to the Machiavellian tradition? Well, what they added to republicanism was the idea that if you want to be a good Christian, you must be a good citizen. So they were all supporters of the Reformation in one way or another, the English Commonwealth men. So they combined Christianity and Republican liberty. They opposed to Catholicism and the Catholic tradition, above all, of the Counter-Reformation, the idea that Christianity is a religion of liberty. And so if you want to be a good Christian, a true Christian, you might stand for Republican liberty. You cannot accept docility and submission for one simple reason. God wants us to adore him and to obey him, not to be the slave and the servants of men. So this tradition of thought that interpreted Christianity as a religion of liberty, with Harrington, like I said, with Henri Neville and others, definitely represents a fascinating contribution to the long history of republicanism. You see, republicanism is a long tradition of thought. It started, at least in my opinion, with Cicero and the Romans, and it's still alive. So it's remarkably resilient.
Thank you. I think it was a couple of years ago you took part in a platypus event. And for my viewers who don't know what platypus is, it's it's a Marxist organization. They're more academic, and so they bring people together on the left to talk about different issues. So what is, and I was really surprised to see you on there. I don't think they even had your name in the description. Now maybe they do now, but yeah, you I believe you said that in your heart you are a socialist but never a Marxist, and I thought they were going to kick you out after that, but they didn't. So what is the relation between republicanism and the left and other leftist groups?
You're right. I was quite bold to assert that I have always been a socialist in the sense of liberal social, in the Italian tradition of liberal social. Carlo Rosselli is my intellectual mentor, but I've never been a Marxist, because you don't need to be a Marxist to be a socialist. Socialism is an idea of justice, an idea of redemption of human beings from exploitation and from discrimination, from poverty, from from the fact that so many human beings live their lives in conditions that do not allow them to flourish as human beings in the proper sense of the term. So what I said to, but I have been, I admire the enthusiasm of the comrades of the platypus. They remind me of how we were in 1968, 69. Maybe we were even more naive than they are, but the competition in terms of naivety would be tough. But I admire their enthusiasm. In a world, in times like this, in which so few young men and women dedicate their time and their energies and their intellectual resources to ideas of emancipation, associations like a Platypus and others, I'm sure there must be others, they deserve my strong and sincere admiration. What does republicanism bring to socialism? So what could it bring? Well, republicanism could offer my socialist comrades what they need, to say, a theory of social redemption based on the principle of liberty as liberty from domination. There is no such a vision today in the world. Is to say, there are all over the world, in the United States and Europe, there are no longer strong and meaningful socialist movements. What they lack many things, but above all, they don't have the right vision. And it seems to me that the idea that we should commit our lives to the vision of a society in which there are no masters and no slaves, no masters and no servants, is exactly what socialism was about. So I think that we should, that Republicans should talk to socialists, and socialists should listen to Republicans. Just consider the condition of, like I said, of oppressions of workers all over the world. Isn't it fair to say that capitalism today, and especially the large corporations, they represent arbitrary powers? They can do practically what they want. Very, very few. Very few states are willing and capable of imposing limitations to their arbitrary power. Well, when you have arbitrary powers of that magnitude, then from a Republican point of view, there is no such a thing as liberty in the proper sense, because we are dependent on those arbitrary powers. Unfortunately, I must admit that I have not found many socialists willing to listen to Republican language, and very few Republicans willing to take seriously the idea that socialism, after all, is, I would say, a son, intellectually speaking, comes from republicanism, or They have a lot in common. It's a great intellectual and political project, the dialogue between Republicans and socialists. But there is a lot of work to be done, and unfortunately, I am now beginning to be quite old. Others must try this path.
You've talked about how we should maybe work with socialists to promote the idea of liberty, Republican liberty. But how should we work with them to promote economic equality? How far should we go?
We should just do what the socialists did when Socialist Party were founded by the end of the 19th century. First of all, you should reconstruct socialist parties. They are everywhere in terrible shape. Just consider the country where I was born, Italy, and consider and where I grew up. Well, Italy always had, since 1892, a fine socialist party. And then in Italy, we had the strongest communist party in the Western world after 1946. All gone, all gone. Well, first of all, you have to reconstruct the party, the institutions, the organizations. But even more urgent is to exactly replicate what the founders of socialist movements did in the late 19th century. Form cultural associations. Cultural association is the largest possible sense. Citizens getting together to read, to spend their free times, build a cooperative, a union, libraries, sport associations, and try to work on issues that are close to the concerns of ordinary citizens, but issues that are close to the concerns of ordinary citizens, but they are in tune with the ideal of liberty as liberty from domination. For instance, labor rights. This is an enormous terrain of social initiative. But even more urgent, I would put education. It is dramatic, the condition of education in Western democracies, the decline. I can see that every day in the classroom. And even and then healthcare, this fundamental right, the right to be treated decently if you become old, if you lose your good health. Well, these are all great socialist issues that should form the basis of a new left. A new left that could benefit from the idea that the guiding idea is liberty from domination. If you are a senior citizen and your dignity depends on the arbitrary will of bureaucrats, you are not free. This is just an example. So there would be a lot of fine work to do in the direction of infusing within the socialist tradition the ideals of non-domination that classical Republicans have elaborated, and bring Republicans, those who admire classical republicanism as a theory of emancipation, to learn from the magnificent story of socialist movements in the 19th and 20th century.
Well, that is a perfect answer. Before we go, is there anything else that we should be doing as Republicans to promote republicanism in the United States?
Oh, my friends, recover your best American traditions. There are plenty of them. That is to say, you should look at local experiences of self-government, of emancipation in local communities. A colleague of mine, Professor Jeffrey Stout, Princeton, has studied those communities. There are plenty of them. So we have to start at the grassroots level. But, and with this, I hope I'm not, I want to go back to Machiavelli. If you, yes, to have local communities and important experiences at the local level is essential. But you also need political leaders, grand political leaders, those emancipators, the redeemers that Machiavelli was hoping to see in his lifetime and did not see any. Where do great political leaders of movements and experiences of emancipation come from? Nobody knows. And nobody knows when they come. Nobody knows if they will come. But to have some chances that they might come, let's do what we can at the local level. Like I said, rebuilding what has been dissipated over the last decades, with the sad result, you are a young man, but the sad result that now in these times, if you look around, there are no longer powerful, inspiring visions of emancipation that touch the imagination, the hearts of millions of human beings. There is nothing of that sort. They were in the past. Why they existed in the past? And why visions of emancipation no longer exist in our own times? That is the question for you and for your friends to meditate in another occasion.
Wow. Thank you very much. This has been a great interview. Is there anything else you would like to announce or tell us or share with us before we go?
I just want to apologize because, like I said, I am under some sort of flu, so I can imagine how poor my words came through. But I want to thank you and all the friends who are listening. We listen for their understanding.
Great. Well, thank you very much. You have a good day, and thanks for interviewing with us.
Thank you.
Until next time, long live the Republic.